Hi everyone, Jennifer Schaus here. We're coming to you live today from Washington, D.C., and thanks for joining us in our webinar series covering the DFARS, or the Defense Federal Acquisition Regulation Supplement. A little bit about the series. We do have our webinars on Wednesdays and Fridays. All of our webinars are complimentary and recorded. You can find them over on the YouTube channel along with 700 other government contracting webinars, and the corresponding PowerPoints are posted over on slideshare.net. To log into SlideShare, simply use your LinkedIn credentials. It doesn't cost anything, and you'll have the, again, corresponding PowerPoint to all 750 government contracting webinars. If you're interested in advertising or sponsoring the webinar series or any of the other digital media services that we offer, please send us an email to the hello@jenniferschaus.com. In order to register, just go over to our website. It's pretty easy. You'll find the DFARS tab, and once you click on that, you're going to see two columns. On the left-hand side, we actually covered the DFARS back in 2021, so all of those historical recordings are found there. Keep in mind that was 2021, so things probably have changed. And then if you're looking to either register or for any of the recordings for the webinars that we've completed for this series in 2025, you'll find them there on the right-hand side. And we usually get them up within about 24 hours. A little bit about us before we dig into our sponsors and the presentation. We are based in downtown DC and primarily help companies with contract vehicles, first and foremost, the GSA Schedule. We also help with VA schedules and FedLink, as well as others. More information about us and the services that we provide are listed over on our website under the About Us section. Again, focused on that GSA Schedule emphasis, which is where our main expertise are. We just want to draw your attention to the executive order that came out on March 20th to consolidate procurement, mostly IT services and common goods and services under GSA. So if you need help getting onto the GSA schedule, or if you're on the schedule and you want to add us in, make any modifications or changes, just send us an email. We're happy to help you with that. Again, if you're selling to federal contractors, we do offer advertising and a variety of digital media platforms that are listed here, as well as in-person event sponsorship. Here's some of our stats. Our newsletter now reaches over 38,000 subscribers, most of which are federal contractors. Okay, we also want to thank our in-kind sponsors. They help promote our webinars and events that we put on throughout the year. Our friends over at GovEvents. If you visit govevents.com, that's the premier platform for posting events related to government and government contracting. You can find all of our recordings and our upcoming events and webinars on govevents.com. We also want to thank the Fairfax County Economic Development Authority, which has an online calendar for events and webinars that are taking place in the local DC metro area. Also, Tom Johnson and his crew over at Set Aside Alert, that's the go-to publication for finding opportunities for women-owned, veteran-owned, Hub Zone, 8A, and other small business set-asides. Visit setasidealert.com for more information. We also want to thank the Virginia Apex Accelerator. They're a trusted resource and DLA-funded organization. They provide local training, counseling, and mentoring for aspiring government contractors, as well as matchmaking events. If you want to sell to state, local, or federal governments, please contact your local Apex Accelerator. Please visit the links on your screen to review the training calendar, locate free resources, and to schedule an appointment with a Virginia Apex Accelerator counselor today. Now, we also want to thank our paid sponsors, again, which is what allows us to complete these webinars for you and allow them to be complimentary. BidSpeed. The BidSpeed platform allows users to search public sector opportunities at the federal, state, and local level. Users can also find anything from a compliance matrix to teaming partners, incumbent point of contacts, expiring contracts, and proposal templates. Discover, manage, and secure government contracts with BidSpeed. BidSpeed is an official partner of the SBA's ETG Empower to Grow platform or program. Contact BidSpeed today. D3, if you're thinking about contracting with the Department of Defense, you need to prepare for CMMC, the Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification. C3 suite of CMMC solutions include C3 Command, C3 Catalyst, and C3 Core. These solutions answer the needs of every defense contractor. Whether your CMMC priority is a fast, defined path to compliance, or you need the flexibility to manage multiple environments, C3 offers solutions. They are your partner with the deep expertise in IT, cybersecurity, and compliance. Contact C3 today. WorkPlan. WorkPlan is an online contract management and accounting tool designed for federal contractors and hosted by Amazon Web Services. Get and stay DCAA compliant, manage expenses, timekeeping, and forecasting. Plus, use the WorkPlan platform to manage your capture process and your CRM. Contractors can integrate their HR and payroll into this one easy-to-use solution. Contact WorkPlan today. Ateria. Ateria specializes in Microsoft Cloud licenses and services for government and government contractors. Ateria provides a business advantage for Microsoft Government Cloud licensing, managed IT administration and security, as well as data intelligence services and solutions. They implement secure, compliant, and scalable solutions to enhance operations, reduce risk, and uncover opportunities. Contact Ateria for expert IT assistance. Last but not least, our friends over at Gov White Papers. Gov White Papers is the central hub for government and supporting industry, government contractors to find and post content geared towards solving public sector challenges. With your free membership, you can add relevant white papers, case studies, data sheets, and more, making your content available to a wider government audience. Have the expertise but not the content? Gov White Papers can also create materials to meet your specific needs. Join for free today at govwhitepapers.com. Okay, the reason we are here today, hopefully I've got the right slides up. It should be part 213. It is just a typo on the last slide. I apologize. We are covering simplified acquisition procedures, and we've got two lovely ladies from Capital Edge Consulting, Kobina Walkland and her colleague Jillian. Kobina, I'm going to turn the floor over to you, and I'll put myself on mute. Just let me know when you're ready for your next slide, and thanks again for joining us today.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jennifer. Really appreciate it. Wow, that was a lot of good content and really good slides there that I suggest everyone check out. Those are some really good resources, so thank you for that. My name is Kobina Walkland. I am a senior manager here at Capital Edge Consulting. Capital Edge Consulting, we were established back in 2010. We are headquartered in the DC area, and we employ just about over 70 professionals. What we do is we help with government contracting compliance. We are a go-to resource for that, as well as government contract compliance, public training. We work with a lot of firms, obviously here, J. Schaus and Associates. We work with NCMA, Thompson Grants, PCI, Fed Pubs, to name a few. It's something we really love doing and really love, bringing knowledge to everyone. But we basically assist both government contractors and federal grant recipients, and what we help with is navigating regulatory and contractual compliance across all industries. We serve all local, state, federal government, but that's really what we do. We spend a lot of time doing that. When we think about the segregation of what type of business systems we support, right? We support accounting and finance. We support estimating systems, purchasing systems. We really work in the FAR and DFAR every day, and we're excited to train with you today. I myself have been at Capital Edge Consulting for about 10 years. What I do with the majority of my time is I work in supply chain and procurement and really help our clients with their purchasing systems. So I help during contractor purchasing system reviews. I help prepare clients for them. I help be an advocate for them during the CPSRs. I help them with post-CPSR support. We help with all types of things, commerciality determinations, price analysis, you name it. But I'm really excited to do this training with you today. Jennifer, if you'd like to go to the next slide, I will introduce my colleague, Jillian Colbert. She is also a consultant here at Capital Edge Consulting. She's been with the firm for a few years. She spends the majority of her time supporting clients with their 640 small business reviews, as well as purchasing system compliance. And I'm going to go over the first few slides and then she'll finish us off today. Go to the next slide, please. All right, next slide, please. Thank you. So as Jennifer mentioned, today we're going to go over the simplified acquisition procedures. Here's the general idea of what we will be covering today. So DFAR 213, it is actually broken up into 6 sections, basically. If you can see the bullets here, we're going to go over the overview. We're going to go over the various thresholds with some exceptions that are identified within the thresholds. We'll go over the general procedures, and then it's split up into actions at or below the micro purchase threshold, which is generally $10,000, and then the simplified acquisition methods, which is, and then go into the fast payment procedures. We're going to go into the procedures for commercial products or services, and then also the procedures for under the 8A program. Again, it's Jillian's specialty here. That's what we're going to go through today. Next slide, please. Thank you. So simplified acquisition procedures. For those of you who are familiar with the FAR and the DFAR, this is actually a supplement to FAR 13, Simplified Acquisition Procedures. Actually, about this time last year, I did the FAR 13 series for Jennifer Schaus and Associates. So if you want to go online and pull that up, this is going to go hand in hand with that series. This is a supplement to that. It's generally applicable to Department of Defense contracts, but the purpose is the same between the two. You want to use simplified acquisition procedures to simplify purchases of supplies and services. The name is pretty self-explanatory. We want to simplify the procedures for smaller dollar purchases. So generally speaking, we have the thresholds here. We have the micro purchase threshold, as I said, $10,000. We have the simplified acquisition threshold, which is generally $250,000. And there are some exceptions and some variations. We will be touching on them today. Some examples of the types of exceptions and variations would be commerciality. So the threshold is going to be higher for commercial purchases, which makes sense, right? Because we really want to purchase commercially, right? We want to identify that we're purchasing commercial products, commercial services. There's also emergencies, humanitarian, peacekeeping operations as well, where the thresholds are going to vary. And we will get into those details today. Next slide, please. Thank you. So the first section here is the general section in DFAR. It's specifically 213.101. The structure awards valued above the micro purchase threshold. So contract line items, delivery schedule, invoice instructions in a manner that will minimize the generation of invoices valued at or below the micro purchase threshold. The government's trying to make it easier, right? Things below the micro purchase threshold, they don't want to make it a burden. So they want to try to simplify it and make it streamlined, valued above the micro purchase threshold. And then promoting competition. Even though these are smaller dollar purchases, we still need to promote competition when we're using simplified acquisition procedures, as the government always wants to ensure they're getting a fair and reasonable price while also using streamlined processes. So for information on the various approaches that may be used to competitively fulfill the DoD requirements, specifically we want to see PGI 213.104, which is promoting competition. And what this does is it just helps contracting officers with the different competition methods. When we think about that, right? Best value, lowest price, technically acceptable, and we'll get into a little bit of that. Next slide, please. So soliciting competition, and we always reference the DFAR specific reference here just for your own knowledge. It's nice to have them on the slides here so you know where you can go to kind of find this information. But evaluation factors that the contracting officer needs to include, and offers as well, should be considered. So we want to make sure the contracting officer is always including an evaluation factor that regards supply chain risk when acquiring anything that's information technology, whether it's a service, a supply that is a covered system, maybe as part of a covered system, or it could be in support of a covered system. This is a really important focus that the government's honing in on, because cybersecurity, it's really exploded. It's a big focus of government contracting today. So it's important to understand that when we're soliciting or what we're soliciting. So covered system, it's actually a defined term. Anytime there's a procurement of anything information systems related, it's really important to understand that supply chain risk does need to be included as an evaluation factor when soliciting competition. So if you're going to be bidding on something that includes covered system, just know that there should be that type of evaluation factor that's going to be considering supply chain risk. Okay, so specifically, you'd want to look into 215.101-270 for the specific limitations and prohibitions on the use of lowest price technically acceptable source selection process, which are applicable to simplified acquisitions. The general principle here really is that there are limitations when the government can use this. It might be easier to say that if it's technically acceptable, we're going to go with the lowest price, but there are minimum requirements that also need to be met, and quality can't really be more important. For example, there has to be some type of high degree of confidence that that technical proposal wouldn't result in better quality to the government if it was done in a best value technical trade-off situation. So if we're going to use lowest price technically acceptable, the contracting officer really has to ensure that the file itself is documented and justified accordingly for using this process. This is something we actually hone in on and really harp on a lot, is documentation in government contracting. Really document what you're doing, keep record of it, take credit for what you're doing, and really have that support. It's one thing to kind of say you're doing something, but it's another to make sure everything is documented. And then the last bullet here, we identify you want to look into 217.7801 for the prohibition of use of reverse auctions for personal protective equipment and aviation critical safety items. It's the same concept. So what we're identifying here, quality is important, not just price. It makes sense for these types of items where protection and aviation critical safety items, it's really important when we think about quality. For those of you who might not know reverse auction, it's interesting, but it's where you essentially see the other offers' prices, not their identity, and then the lowest price is bid on that. I think we can go to the next slide, please. Thank you. All right, so the evaluation of quotations or offers. We always reference this again, 204.7603, but this is going to have the procedures on the requirement for contracting officers. We commonly refer to them as COs, so I'm sorry if I say CO rather than contracting officer, but to consider SPRS, supplier performance risk system risk assessments as a basis for award. Essentially here, they're identifying that the contracting officer shall consider price risk and supplier risk, if available in SPRS, as part of the award decision. And specifically for procurements of an end product identified by a material identifier that's available, the contracting officer shall also consider the assessments of item risk as part of the award decision. So if there's offers or quotes, people making offers without a risk assessment in SPRS, they shouldn't be considered favorably or unfavorably, but contracting officers should use their discretion in considering the information that is available to them in SPRS on the item risk, price risk, supplier risk, per the direction that's referenced in this 204.7603. Next slide, please. All right, thank you. So now we're into actions at or below the micro purchase threshold. If you recall at the beginning, I said it's kind of split up into different subparts, and this would be the next subpart, actions at or below the micro purchase threshold. So again, CPGI 213.201G for guidance on use of higher micro purchase threshold prescribed in FAR to support a declared contingency operation or to facilitate defense against or recovery from nuclear, biological, chemical, or radiological attack. Okay, I didn't include them in the slide because we can kind of look them up on our own, but it's split into two sections. It's split into for supplies and then for services, and it depends on whether we're inside the U.S. or outside the U.S. So inside the U.S. for supplies, the higher micro purchase threshold is going to be $20,000. And then outside the US, it's actually going to be bumped up to $35,000. And then for services specifically, they actually take into consideration the government purchaser physical location, the place of performance, and then we have the threshold. So if we're inside the United States and the period of performance is inside or outside of the United States, if the government purchaser physical location is inside the United States, but the place of performance is inside or outside, then it's going to be $20,000. But then if the government purchase or physical location is outside of the United States and the period of performance is inside of the United States, it's going to be $20,000. But if both the place of performance and the government purchase or physical location is outside of the United States, then it's going to be $35,000. So the two thresholds are really $20,000 and $35,000 that it gets bumped up to. And it makes sense when we think about the types of activities, right? Nuclear, biological, chemical, or radiological attack. It really makes sense that we're going to raise that micro purchase threshold to make the purchases way more simplified in these situations. And then next here, this last bullet, the contracting officer cannot procure, obtain, or extend or renew a contract for any equipment, system, or service to carry out covered missions that use covered defense, telecommunications equipment, or services as a substantial component of any system. Really here, what we're thinking is if you're offering or considering offering any telecommunication systems or services to the government, you should be familiar with this subpart. Actually, I didn't list the subpart here, but it is 204.21, as it prohibits certain telecommunication services and certain equipment from certain entities that are actually named in that clause. So you'll want to make sure you look that up to see what the prohibitions are for those services or equipments that are named. Next slide, please. All right, so for actions at or below the micro purchase threshold, we want to get into talking about the use of the government commercial purchase card. This, as I actually recall a year ago when we did the FAR 13 series, this being the most preferred method. Okay, essentially this is a commercial credit card. I'm sure if many of you are in defense contracting, right, you are familiar with the P card, but a government commercial purchase card, it's attempting to make things easier, more streamlined. We want to use it for purchases at or below the micro purchase threshold for all types of contract actions that are specifically authorized by the FAR, and there are going to be some exceptions. So if the Deputy Secretary of Defense has approved an exception, if there's a general or flag officer SES member makes a determination that specifically available sources don't accept the P cards and the contracting officer is seeking another source to accept the P card, there might be a situation where an activity does not have a resident general or flag officer or SES member. So the delegation of the authority is given to the level of senior local commander or director is permitted. And then there's also some certain areas where the purchase meets one or more of some criteria, and they're actually listed on this next slide. We didn't have room, and we were considering not including these in their slides just to refer you to the list. But if we go ahead to the next slide, Jennifer, I just wanted to lay it out for everyone because there are quite a few areas, right, where we might see the area where we're unable to. So the place of performance is entirely outside the US and its outlying areas. An SF-44 purchase for aviation fuel or oil. An overseas transaction by a contracting officer in support of a contingency operation. We don't need a, I don't need to read through all these, but we want to make sure we did include all of them for this. So payment might be made with an accommodation check, transportation bill. It's under an FSS contract, Federal Supply Service Schedule contract that does not permit the use of a government-wide commercial P card. And then I think there's one other on the next slide. There's one other purchase that it's specific. Oh yeah, here. The purchase is for medical services, but it's not just medical services. It has to be very specific. So we listed all the sub-criteria here under 9, and it's very specific when it's for a medical service. So it involves a controlled substance or narcotic, requires submission of a HCC record, price is subject to an independent determination. We've listed it out. We just wanted to make sure we are aware of this exception. And I believe you guys will get these slides, so you don't need to read through them all at this moment. You can go ahead to the next slide, Jennifer. Thank you. Okay, this is the third of the 6 kind of sub areas that I referenced. If you look here at the title, it is now the simplified acquisition methods. Okay, we're moving on to that. The government the government-wide commercial P card for these, we want to make sure that we're looking into PGI 213 for what is necessary for authorizing, establishing, and operating a commercial P card for this method. And this is for purchases between 10 and 25K if, and there's some stipulations here, it's made outside the US, it's for a commercial product, but it's not for work to be performed by employees recruited within the US. It's not for supplies or services through services identified in FAR 25.7, which is the list of prohibited sources, not for ball bearings as end items. It does not require transportation of supplies by sea. So really here, we're thinking the government is trying to make it easier, but we're limiting the risk in what can be procured utilizing this method, right? We don't want to take advantage of it, and there's certain things that we just can't utilize it for. The next slide, please. Thank you. So here, when we're doing utilizing a government-wide commercial P card for simplified acquisition methods, we need to make sure that the individual making the purchase is authorized, that they're trained in accordance with the various agency procedures. We need to comply with the requirements of FAR 8.002 when we're making the purchase, and we need to seek maximum practical competition. This is interesting. We've referenced competition twice here. Competition is very important for those of you that do a lot of government contracting, right? Competition to the maximum extent practicable. It's all good business practice no matter what, but it's a requirement, right? We want to seek maximum practicable competition. A CO that's supporting a contingency operation or a humanitarian or peacekeeping operation could also use the P card to make purchases that exceed the micro purchase threshold, but don't exceed the SAT if there's these stipulations. They're being purchased and are immediately available. There's only one delivery and one payment that's going to be made, so not a bunch of deliveries, a bunch of payments and transactions. It's going to be very clean. And then, of course, the requirements that we just went over in this section are also being met. The next slide, please. Thank you. So obtaining contractor acceptance and modifying purchase orders. This is really, we need to require written acceptance of purchase orders that are classified acquisitions. We can see PGI specifically 213.3023 for guidance. What we're talking about here really, it's geared to items that are more administrative in nature and not something where the contracting officer and contractor will both be required to sign, which is bilateral. Think something of like an equitable adjustment that needs to be made maybe because of a change order or something. But we want to make sure we understand the difference between when we can use unilateral modifications. And then a supplemental agreement converts a unilateral purchase order to a bilateral agreement if it's not previously in the purchase order in a standard form SF30. I think we're going to go ahead to the next slide, Jennifer. Thank you. And I believe Jillian, I'm going to hand it over to Jillian. She's going to cover the remaining kind of subparts and sections here. I know we're still in the simplified acquisition methods, but she is going to take over from here. Thank you, Jillian.
Yes, thank you, Kobe. So another method that could be used is the blanket purchase agreement. It is another simplified method for filling anticipated repetitive needs for supplies and services by establishing what is called a charge account with a qualified source of supply. They would issue the BPA to the contractor, and the agency could order its repetitive needs under that. And this DFARS provision specifically addresses that individual purchases for assistance may be made at any dollar value. However, it must satisfy the competitive requirements for any action not using the simplified acquisition procedures. So far, part 16 is the competitive requirements. Typically, anything at or below the simplified acquisition procedure gets generally accepted from those procedures, but if it's going to exceed this amount and you're using a BPA, then the contracting officer has to use part 6, which is the competition requirements. Again, with the caveat that there's still going to be competition and a fair and reasonable price determination, even if you are at or below the simplified acquisition threshold. So another way to award contracts are through impressed funds and third-party drafts. They're not used very often, and when they are, it's on a very limited basis. So specifically on, a limited basis, installation commanders and commanders of other activities with contracting authority may be granted authority to establish impress funds and third-party draft accounts. So think small amounts, not big purchases. There has to be some kind of justification on why you're not using one of the other available methods. For example, overseas transactions at or below the micro purchase threshold in support of a contingency operation, or humanitarian or classified transactions can use this. So next slide, please. So another method is the purchase order invoice voucher. This is standard form 44. Again, it's not used a lot, but standard form 44 is a pocket-sized purchase order form. It is for on-the-spot, over-the-counter purchases of supplies and non-personal services when the CO might be away from the office, for example. These purchases are going to be limited to $2,500 or less, and it's for supplies or services which have to be immediately available. It has to have only one delivery and one payment. And it's determined to be more economical and efficient to use this method of purchase. And specific for DFARS here, they're talking about like fuel and oil and overseas transactions and transactions in support of intelligence operations and other types of specialized activities. So next slide, please. So the next subpart is fast payment procedures. So individual orders may exceed the simplified acquisition threshold for brand name commercial product commissary resale substance and medical supplies for direct shipment overseas. So this is kind of an exception to the rule, and in general, these fast payment procedures allow payments under limited conditions to a contractor before the government verifies that the supplies have been received and accepted. So the contractor is going to get paid fast, but when they submit the invoice, they're submitting a certification that the supplies are going to be delivered and that they have been placed with the post office or shipping service, like FedEx, for example. If they do not arrive, or if they arrive broken or damaged, then the contractor is going to be responsible for either replacing or repairing the supplies. So the benefit is that the contractor can get paid quickly, but then they also have the risk of repairing or replacing if something goes, wrong with delivery. So next slide, please. So under the simplified procedures, there are special requirements for certain commercial items. Even though there's a higher dollar threshold here at 7.5 million, and we're still under the simplified procedures, if there is only one offer, they still need to follow the guidance and the special documentation requirements for sole source, including brand name acquisitions. So the contracting officer is going to be obligated to follow certain procedures and write the proper justifications, even if it is following the simplified acquisition procedures and awarding commercial items. For example, justification is required for the contract file, why it needs to use other than full and open competition, and determine that the cost is fair and reasonable to the government, even though there is only one offer, or if it did a sole source. Next slide, please. So now moving on to the simplified acquisition procedures under the 8A program. So as kind of Kobe mentioned earlier, the 8A program is a small business administration, also known as the SBA, program that helps small businesses that are owned and operated by socially and economically disadvantaged individuals. Think of your women-owned small business, your small disadvantaged small business, for example. It limits competition for them. These are set-aside contracts for the 8A. There are whole sections and regulations on this, but here, in regards to the simplified acquisition procedures and awarded contracts, this is another way that the government is trying to help make it easier to award these contracts to these set-asides, and then also under that dollar threshold. So there is a partnership agreement between the SBA and the DoD, where the DoD can award directly these purchase orders to 8A contractors. They negotiate the price and the terms once that is agreed between the DoD, and the contractor. And then they will submit the purchase order to the SBA and a notice saying that it has been processed under this partnership agreement. So as long as the SBA does not come back, and it's typically within 2 business days, and they don't say that the 8A participant is unqualified or ineligible for the program, they can begin performance. It is a streamlined way to get them started. So next slide, please. Thank you. Continuing with the 8A program, this section says that contracting officers cannot use the sole source authority to purchase religious-related services to be performed on a U.S. military installation. Additionally, for competitive purchases under the 8A program, contracting officers cannot exclude a nonprofit organization from the company. Next slide, please. Continuing with the 8A program, the contracting officer does not need to obtain a contractor's written acceptance of a purchase order or modification of a purchase order for an acquisition under the 8A program. This just really tries to streamline the process of awarding these lower dollar threshold amounts to small businesses, specifically those in the 8A program, to make it easier for small business and to help champion small businesses. But this is the last instructional slide from us. If there are any follow-up questions, our information is on this screen and the next screen. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon.
Great, thanks so much, Jillian, and thanks, Kabina, as well. We've got your contact information here, so for any of the attendees that are with us live, please feel free to contact Kabina or Jillian directly. And if you are watching or listening to this as a recording on YouTube, give us a like, leave a comment, or feel free to go ahead and contact Kabina and Jillian directly. Again, here's the contact information. Great information today. Everyone's always curious about simplified acquisitions, so this is a great webinar to get a better understanding about it. And as Kabina mentioned, she had covered the FAR part, corresponding part on this, so please feel free to reference that as well. Thanks, ladies, and thanks everyone who has joined us live and or for the recording. And we'll see you next week on Wednesday and Friday as we cover FAR Part 214 and, or I'm sorry, DFARS Part 214 and DFARS Part 215. The registration links are on our website, and the recording should be up within about 24 hours. Thank you.